Hi, and welcome to this event with Monica Byrne and John Scalzi for The Actual Star. I'm Carter. I use they, them pronouns, and I am the event coordinator here at Astoria Bookshop. The bookshop hosting this event, just in case you found us through like the internet and everything. I just wanted to let you know that we are the ones hosting this. We are a bookshop in Astoria, Queens in New York City. Before we get started, I wanted to go through a few housekeeping things. You will have the opportunity to ask questions during the last 15-ish minutes of this. And if you have questions throughout, you can put them in that question function down at the bottom. You can chat with one another in the chat on the right over there. But we will kick you out if you participate in any trolling or any racial, ethnic, or homophobic slurs. I'm asking you all to be kind and respectful towards one another in that chat. Finally, there's also a button right down there at the bottom, and it's in green, that offers the option to buy a copy of The Actual Star, which, if you haven't already, would be a great choice. Highly recommend it. And it comes with a signed bookplate, so even more reason to buy it. So yeah, let's get things started, and I'll introduce our fantastic guests. Monica Byrne, who uses she, her pronouns, grew up in Annville, Pennsylvania. As the youngest child of two theologians, she studied She studied biochemistry at Wellesley, NASA, and MIT before pivoting to fiction and theater. Byrne is the author of the novel The Girl in the Road, winner of the 2014 Otherwise Award, as well as plays Night Work, What Every Girl Should Know, Tarantino's Yellow Speedo, and Ohio, which have been performed around the world. She also presented the first science fictional TED Talk in Vancouver. You can visit her online at monicabyrne.org and support her work on Patreon. She is based in Durham, North Carolina, and loves a good thunderstorm. John Scalzi, who uses he, him pronouns, is one of the most popular science fiction authors of his generation, which I can say is true based on sales in our bookstore. His debut, Old Man's War, won him the John W. Campbell Award for Best New Writer. His New York Times bestsellers include The Last Colony, Fuzzy Nation, and Red Shirts, which won the 2013 Hugo Award for Best Novel. The 2020's The Last Emperor, and the 2020's Last Emperor, sorry. Misspoke there. Material from his blog, Whatever, has also earned him 2 other Hugo Awards. Scalzi, who serves as critic at large for the Los Angeles Times, he lives in Ohio with his wife and daughter. Now I'm going to let Monica take over and read a quick excerpt from the novel, and then John and Monica will take it away with questions. So I will see you all later.
Thank you so much, Carter. Appreciate it.
Hi.
Okay, so we're going to start with a short excerpt from The Actual Star. I almost just said The Girl on the Road, which gives you an impression of what the last week has been like. But so just to give a quick introduction, The Actual Star is an epic science fiction novel. It goes from the collapse of the ancient Maya elites in 1012 to a far future utopia in 3012. And I am going to read an excerpt from 1012 from the ancient Maya times. And these are, this is a royal family, 2 young twins who are taking the throne. And in order to take the throne, they have to hold a ceremony and a ball game. And the ancient Mesoamerican ball game is very bloody, but it starts with music. So here we go. Ishul watched the performance begin. The ocarina players met on the ball court, then turned to face the direction they'd come. She forgot her anger at the insolent farmer. She wanted to enjoy the music. She needed to trust that all of her long preparations and those of Ajul and Mutna and Upakal would carry the night. The peasants were fed, the court was clean, the musicians were perfect. Their 5-fold harmony held even as they lowered to a kneel together. She felt Adjul's hand over hers. He knew she was tense. But as the players settled back on their heels and the ocarinas held their final note, Ishul felt something cross over in her, and the air on the court took on a telltale shimmer, as if underwater. That was the sign. Shibalba was near. Adjul's hand tightened. In the new silence, Mutna took her place at the head of the ball court. She had a grave, triumphant look. She lifted her arms, and the musicians stirred in readiness. Ishul held her breath. Mutna brought down her arms. The agave horns gave a terrifying blast like giant bullfrogs. Pet cried out and covered her ears. Ishul put her hand on her shoulder. The sound of the agave horns was always startling, even for Ishul. Then the horns broke into a flutter as if dragging a furrow through the earth, and the ocarinas came back, dancing along this new scaffolding. Everything on the court looked more real, as if she were seeing with the clarity of a dream that would dissolve if she got too close. Mutna had once told her that when Shibalba was near, you had no doubt of what you saw. It was the very quality of certainty that marked it. Then the conch players lifted their shells to their lips. Mutna opened her hand. Ishul was not prepared. A tear escaped and fell down her face. The players' hands slid in and out of the shells, shaping the groans that echoed up and down the valley. Then the rattles began, as if every cicada in the realm had descended. She couldn't believe they could get louder, and then they did. The ocarina players put down their instruments and prostrated themselves. Mutna strode the court and began to shout, and the crowd answered. Come here, white and yellow, left and right, come. Come here, red and black, day rise and day fall, come. Come here, thou green, you in the center, come. All of you ancestors who preceded us here, all of you gods in this place, all of you gods of the days, all of you gods of Shibalba, named and unnamed, known and unknown, keep us in balance, keep us in peace. The ocarina players rose on the ball court, shoulders hunched, and began to undulate from the pits of their stomachs. They wore jade masks now. Ishul hadn't seen where they'd been hidden, and neither had the crowd who marveled at the revelation. The players made their way to the four moorings of the ball court and held out their hands as if to invite, but everyone knew the summons was not for them, and no one in the crowd stirred but to give the dancers room. This is even better than our parents did, Ishul thought. All is proceeding exactly as it should. Mutna beckoned to the warriors, 2 each from Tsoina, Katwitz, and Pekwitz, who'd had the honor of preparing the captives for the game. The old man who'd escaped and returned was kept aside, looking feverish. But the stout woman looked ready, her brow set, and the skinny man was straining forward, his eyes darting to and fro. Be brave now, Ishul thought toward the captives. Accept your part. Acceptance will make everything go well for you. There we go.
There you go. All right.
I.e., suck it up. You're about to die.
I mean, it's always so inconvenient when that happens.
Yes.
So the actual talk, by the way, I've said this to you before, I really like the cover. I think it's really good looking. And also, it's a big book. Look at that. That's a lot going on there. One, I think it's terrific, and it's not just me saying it. I actually blurbed it here on the back. This one's me. But the other thing I wanted to do when we have a whole bunch of questions for you, by we, I mean me, and I'm going to start with just the easiest one, which is not A, what do you think about Pogs, or B, where do you get your ideas? But
damn.
But I know. You were really looking forward to talking about Pogs. This is an internet thing that we went from earlier today. But the first question actually is not where you get your ideas, but me asking you to talk about the genesis of this particular book and this particular ideas here. Where did that come from? Why was it this book at this particular time? And when was it, when you were thinking about all the things that eventually came into this book, that you made the decision? It was like, oh yeah, that's going to be my next book?
It is accumulation of the last 10 years. Like
Yeah.
it is an accumulation of everything I've been thinking about in the last 10 years, and that includes the all the political aspects.
Mhm.
So when I started writing, when I went to
Mhm.
Belize for the first time in 2012, Obama was president
Sure.
and had just no, he was getting ready for re-election. And so it was well into his first term. Romney was going to challenge. And I remember actually putting off my second trip to Belize so that I could stay and make sure that Obama was reelected. And I left like the day after the
Right.
election. But, you know, hindsight is 2020. There were many warnings and people saying things about where the country was headed and the ugliness of the underbelly of the United States, and that how much it was manifesting in
Mhm.
response to Obama's presidency already.
Right.
And then, and 2012 to 2016 were another 4 Obama years of relative sanity. Like Obama did a lot of things wrong, also a lot of problems. But then the 2016 election happened, and I had not yet begun my 3012 portion. I'd only
Right.
just vaguely started thinking about it. I had the 2012 and the 1012 down. 3012, I I had no idea. But as soon as it happened, as soon as that election happened, it became my response to that election and how we could ever get ourselves out of the circumstances that led to that election.
Sure.
It means undoing the fabric of society. Surprise. It means
Well,
reworking. Yeah.
I mean, I think it does surprise people to some extent, because the 3012 parts don't necessarily feel like, with the exception of as part of the larger narrative, they don't necessarily feel like they are a response to specific incidents in current time. And yet you get to something that I think is really interesting, which is, the fact that we as creators, as writers, do live in the current time, and what's going on in the world makes a difference in what we are writing.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes I think Amanda Palmer has the blender metaphor that like how much is a creator's brain on the blender, either they're at 1 or they're at 10, like how much they remix basically what's happening in the world and put it into their art. And Amanda says, her setting is like 1. She just talks directly about what's happening in the world in her songs. And I'd say my blender setting is more like 8. I think it's more.
Right.
And at different timelines. I mean, like the 2012 portion, for example, was super easy to write because I just took lots of experiences from my own travels there. But 3012 was definitely like, how do we undo everything that has broken our society down, including the great evils of whiteness and patriarchy and assigned gender and all sorts of things. And so that was where I began. Like, how do we start undoing this? Yeah.
Well, it's good that you brought that up, because actually question number 4, because I have 10 questions, actually 11. This goes to 11. But question number 4, I'm going to skip right ahead and come back to 2 and 3 later. But it is talking a little bit about when you develop the culture of 1,000 years in the future. Obviously, some of it here is you are developing it as a response. But is there an extent to which you have an idea of that culture and then moved it backwards? Do you know what I'm saying? What is the vector of the creation? Is the vector of the creation moving forward or moving backwards? You see, you understand what I'm saying here?
I do see what you're saying. So part of it was total wish fulfillment. So there's, I mean, there is a point, and I think this was a retroactive thing where Leah in 2012 says, what if travel were a religion? And whenever I go to Belize to this day, but I've been back 7 or 8 times, it feels like a religious ritual. It feels like now I get on the plane and now I make the connection, and now is the time when I see the Belize River below me from the airplane window, and now is the time when I step out on the tarmac and I smell that air that's just so incomparable to me. And all of it, raised Catholic, obviously, to everyone listening, I was raised Catholic, raised by 2 theologians, and I think of everything in terms of religion. It's very much part of my identity and culture. But I wanted to codify those rituals into an actual religion. That would be the basis of the religion, constant travel. And constant travel then became one of the fundamentals of that world, was that you could never stay in the same place.
Right.
And you could never stay with the same people for more than 9 days. No más que 9 is one of the rules of St. Leah. So the rules of St. Leah are like, it's based on the rule of St. Benedict, which is just general guidelines for living, but that ensure peace in a global society. And it's as if the entire planet is one nomadic monastery, which are all things that deeply appeal to me.
Sure.
Yeah.
It's almost like travel as a sacrament.
Yes, totally. Well, and then there are all the sacrament, Catholic word. Cha-ching.
Catholic word. Don't worry, I have another Catholic word for travel coming up, but just keep going. God,
okay, I'm excited. But yeah, no, there are actual, I mean, in building the religion, there are sacraments. I think there are 9. There are like either 8 or 9 sacraments. It's just terrible. But I based La Vieja, which is the far future religion, on Catholicism, partly because there's a huge Catholic population in Belize.
Sure.
And a lot of Maya Catholic syncretism. And so that made sense. La Vieja has a number of sacraments, and one of them is, for example, going on your first solo trip. So you are not allowed to, I mean, people, you're monitored by people who, watch you, but basically it's like a walkabout, or like, your first time in the wilderness, and it happens when you're 12 or 13. It's a coming of age. And all of that is incredibly appealing to me.
Yeah. Well, this does go back to actually question number 2, which was going to be, talk to me about travel. When you were discussing about how it felt when you take your trips to Belize, the word that immediately popped into my head listening to you was pilgrimage, right? That feels like what you're talking about. And obviously this is it hugely informs the book, but I want you to go and talk a little bit more about what travel means to you, not only as a person, but as a writer, and what it provides to you generally, but also specifically with this book, that you can't just get off of Google Maps and research.
Yeah. Well, in this book, I made very certain that every place I wrote about were places I had been.
Right.
And that was consistent. It is consistent actually with the religion, that you have to honor the God of the place. And the God of the place is literally just the ground beneath your feet. And so I plotted out the two big journeys in 3012. One character goes this way around the globe, the other goes this way around the globe, and they meet in Belize. I made sure, I was like, have I been enough places? And, both of these, like, yes. Is it plausible? How does she get across the sea? There are sea roads, so like those become the constraints. But travel, well, first I need to acknowledge what a privileged travel is, like, period. It is just, when I first started traveling abroad in my late 20s, and it was to research The Girl on the Road. I was under the incredibly naive impression that everyone in the world had as much freedom of movement as as United States or Canadian or UK citizens do, and that's very much not the case. And so part of why I wanted to make freedom of movement one of the tenets of La Vieja, the far future religion, is because that is a fundamental human right. You know, it is a fundamental human right guaranteed by the United Nations, actually, Declaration of Human Rights, but it is never enforced. And so there are things like borders and passports and all kinds of things. But travel, I travel because, oh man.
I told you I was going to be asking the tough questions here. I'm going to get right to the nitty gritty, right to your soul, Monica Byrne.
Okay. My life has changed every single time I've traveled.
Sure.
It's changed the course of my life every time I've traveled. Going to Kauai changed my life. Going to Ethiopia and India changed the course of my life. Taking the road trip that I just took for 2 months has definitely changed the course of my life. I don't yet know how. But going to Belize, that's even more of a just I went there because my mother taught there in the 60s. And I wanted to honor her by going to see where she had taught. She loved it. She talked about it all the time. She was obsessed with it. She actually, right here, is one of the coasters that she bought there. And it says Belize there. Yeah, right there. And that's on my desk, you know? Right. So I went there for her and I expected never to come back. And it is uncanny how the country got a hold of me. Right. And I love being surprised like that. I love the unexpected. And I generally don't write domestic realism. I don't know actually if that's a slur. It might be a slur. Is it? Okay.
I don't think so.
Fiction where nothing supernatural happens.
Sure.
Yeah.
Contemporary fiction.
Okay. Good. Yes. Contemporary literary domestic realism fiction. Sure. And I have never been attracted to write it. I've never been attracted to read much of it.
Sure.
And so in order to sort of write works that are as big as my desire, I have to leave. I have to go all over the world and meet all kinds of different people and be shaped, like allow myself to be shaped by the travel. Like those are the constraints that I choose, not to stay in one place, but to go wherever I go and let that place shape me however it will. And that's definitely what happened in Belize.
Well, and one of the reasons I think why you keep coming back to Belize, right?
Yeah. Well, at this point, it's also just because I have a lot of friends there and I miss them. You know, I have a lot of friends there and I miss them. It's another home, but I also want to be very mindful that even if it feels like home, I'm a guest in the country and I don't ever presume upon it further than I am welcomed. And it's complicated, of course, because the Belizean economy depends on tourist dollars. And so, how complicated.
Right. Well, actually, that leads right up into the next question. I mean, you created a future world, and we discussed that a little bit. But you also have two of your narrative threads take place in Belize 1,000 years ago and in contemporary time. And it's one thing to confabulate a future, wherever it is that you want it to go and however it is that you want it to do. But when you are talking about times and places that have been and the way that things are today, there's a lot of, I don't want to say pressure, but I think there is an obligation to get a lot of it right. And particularly if you are, as you say, the guest who is visiting, right? And so I guess the next question is, for you when you are writing the past and current Belize, what did you do and what do you do in terms of research, fact checking, all this sort of stuff to get it to where it is sufficient for your needs, but at the same time have the freedom to tell the story you wish to tell?
Right. So the criterion, no, that's not the right word. There's a word that's evading me.
It'll come to you in a minute.
Yes. What I try to do is write within a universe that is just next door from ours in the multiverse. And so, one butterfly flap away. And so everything is consistent except, these characters are not real, but they could just as easily be. And they are consistent with everything that we know, everything that I know, everything that I researched. And so that's sort of what I try to keep in mind, like how plausible is this? And I do my best. And then honestly, I hire consultants. Like I hire consultants. The acknowledgement section in this book is, I think, 6,000 words long, which is huge. And it's because, and I had at least.
Yeah, well, you start off with a rather substantive author's note, right?
Yes, that also. Right. And basically saying why I made all of the sort of language choices I did. But yeah, no, I hired Katie Usher, who's an amazing friend in Belize, who and artist who checked all sorts of things like, no, Belize is 31 years old, not 30 years old. And they wouldn't say this in this instance. They would say this other thing. This is a cool wordplay that you can do in Creole. And like, I want to make super clear how much she contributed in that respect. I had a Maya archaeologist read the 1012 section. And so honestly, I mean, it's having some humility. Some humility that no matter how much research I do, I am going to need it peer reviewed. And maybe that's where my scientific background comes in, where, I've done the very best I can. But you need other people to check your work. And so, yeah.
No, and I think that is absolutely correct. I mean, it's one of those things where you're like, look, I'm going to do this. It's possible I'm going to get some things wrong because I don't know everything. So I actually have people who know what they're talking about double check you and not necessarily be nice about it. Just do it, right?
Yes. Yeah. No, totally. There was one. Yes, Nicholas Hopkins, and he was wonderful. If he's watching, he was wonderful. But he was the person who wrote or what's the word? Collected the Ch'ol alphabet, or I'm sorry, the Ch'ol glossary. So Ch'ol is a dialect, not dialect. It is a Maya language that was the closest that I could find to what my characters in 1012 might have spoken. And so all of my names and like place names and character names in 1012 are from the Ch'ol dictionary. That's the word I'm looking for. He compiled the Ch'ol dictionary with two other collaborators. And I sent him a first draft of the author's note where I said, I feel bad about this now because of course I wouldn't do it in retrospect, but I said, I've chosen to omit the glottal stops for the ease of an English speaking reader. Right. And I was like, what do you think of this? And he was like, absolutely not. You can't do that. Like that completely changes the entire language. Right. And he was very clear about it. And I'm very glad he was, because immediately I was like, shit, he's totally right. And again, like to have humility about, like, if you're going to write in cultures not your own, have humility about it. And not only do exhaustive research, but pay people to tell you what you did wrong.
Right. Because if you don't pay them to tell you what you did wrong before the book comes out, people will tell you what you did wrong for free on the internet.
All
the time.
Also, there is one mistake. This is the worst thing, and it's not even it's a city in Europe. It rankles me, and I know I'll have so many European readers tweeting at me being like, hey,
did you know?
Look this up.
Well, you and I have talked about this before. I had the book, The Ghost Brigades, where I had an asteroid in a hyperbolic orbit, which absolutely should not be in a hyperbolic orbit. And I knew it, and I tried to get them to correct it, and they kept not correcting it. And they kept saying, oh, no, we'll correct it, And it actually got to hardcover publication. It was still in there. And I'm like, no, because immediately people just started sending me, it's not a hyperbolic. It's like, I know it's not a hyperbolic orbit. And then, of course, the translations all came from the hardcover. So I was wrong, not only in English, but in several languages. L'orbite parabolique. And I was like, no, it's finally fixed. But
you sort of made it. If you're getting corrected in French, you've made it.
I'm not sure how the French feel about that. It's like, no, we will correct you for free.
Right.
There was a question when I was first reading the actual Star. I had meant to write down a question that I had wanted to ask you, and I kept forgetting it. It just because I don't write things down, even when I say I should write them down, because I'm a terrible, terrible person. But thank you for confirming that. I appreciate that. I'm leaving now. Goodbye. The future world that you've created, the culture of that, the one analog in science fiction that it most reminds me of is actually it's not obscure because she is not an obscure author, but Ursula K. Le Guin wrote a book called Always Coming Home, where she writes about a culture that she says might have been in a future Northern California. And it's not a one-to-one thing. It's not a question of, oh, you're doing the same things, but the feel of it really felt similar to me. And I think part of that was that you started off from some of the same precepts, which was a world where people are thinking about the impact that they have in the world. And then also, quite frankly, what it means to be in a post-civilization to some extent, cleaning up the messes of those who've come before you. And it's not like that wasn't a high technology society. It absolutely was, but the choices that they made and how they lived on a day-to-day basis, again, very similar, which does, there's a two-part question, but I'll only ask you the first part now, which was when you were looking for analogs in fiction that already existed, what were some of the places that you were looking at? Or were you responding in ways of like, no, that's not how I would do it. I would do it this way.
I definitely drew a lot on the dispossessed. Ursula K. Le Guin's The Dispossessed, where she details anarchists, an anarchist society, and how it would actually work on a day-to-day basis.
Sure.
And very much drew also on Kim Stanley Robinson's Red Mars, or Mars Trilogy, period, where they basically try to forge another kind of society on Mars. And he goes as far as, I think, writing down their new constitution, which was a level of detail I honestly aspired to. I was like, and that's why we have the sacraments and the rule of St. Leah. I was like, I need to actually write the documents of this future society. Always Coming Home. I have never, I know you love it. And I think you've said before that you dip into it and read parts of it. And it's not necessarily meant to be read linearly, which is itself a statement. It's like a post. I don't want to say postmodern, but just like so beyond the idea of what we think of as a novel. It's a
Right.
collection. It is an ethnography of a far future civilization.
That is absolutely correct.
Yes.
Absolutely correct.
And so I have only ever read it that way. I have dipped in and read it that way. Yeah.
Good. Well, but I mean, and that's the whole thing. I mean, to a very real extent, I think what you are doing in your book counts as an ethnography. I mean, let's look. You got yourself one of these for glossaries, right?
Yes. Use it as a friend.
And you want to know what kind of nerd I am, right? Actually, you know what kind of nerd I am, but I'm going to tell everybody else what kind of nerd I am. When I got the ARC actually had the glossary, and I'm like, well, I'm going straight to the glossary. I don't know about anybody else, right? Because that's the kind of I did that with Dune too when I was a kid. I was like, wait, there's a glossary? This is going to be awesome.
The
right?
first edition of Dune puts it in the front.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. I have a first edition back there, and I was like, it's in the front.
They probably stopped doing that because people are like, why do I need to read this? Why is this homework here? Right. Whereas some of us love homework, apparently. So
exactly. I mean, that was actually a question when we were publishing. I was like, should I put the glossary in the beginning so people don't feel super lost? But I think science fiction readers get it. And I also just tried to, provide as much context clues as humanly possible so that people didn't have to, so that they could figure out what an Inks was and what a Zadre was and all of that.
Right.
But no, Dune was a huge inspiration for the actual star, just in terms of in two ways. One, in terms of scope, like just go all out. I wanted to go all out and take the long view of thousands and thousands of years of human history. And the other one was when I reread, so many of my favorite books to write the actual star. One of the things that thrills me most about Dune, and I can't really figure out why, is the constant juxtaposition of Princess Irulan's future commentary with the actual events as they happen. And I can't still quite put into words why that's so thrilling to me. It's something about, and maybe it's because being raised Catholic, constantly wonder what Jesus was actually like, and would have loved to have a sort of diary, like Peter's diary, like today Jesus spouted some more shit, we don't get it. But like, I wanted to chronicle what happens in 2012, because for everyone watching, what happens in 2012 becomes the basis for the religion in 3012. And so I wanted to show how arbitrary history is, how the events of history and mostly of climate, like climate change changes, sees people around whom history weaves itself afterwards. And that is definitely what happens in the actual star. And it's definitely what happens in 1012 to 2012 and 2012 to 3012. Without giving anything away, the reason that Leah is there in the first place is because of the characters in 1012.
Right. I can't speak for you, but I can say one of the things that I eventually learned to appreciate, and I'm having sun setting right now, and so I'm slowly getting darker and darker and darker. It's not like I'm not trying to be ominous. It's literally I've completely run out of light. Hold on.
I wish I could. Yeah, no, just turn on the lights, John.
There we go. No, the light's behind me. There we go. This should be fine.
Okay.
But part of it is that it would, from a structural point of view, it's really good including what Herbert was doing by giving you supposed documents and then they give you this context so that the next chapter you're like, even if you're not understanding that you're getting the context, you still get the context. So that sort of technical including, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I wanted to do it.
We got time for one more question before we get into the ask a question section. So by the way, folks, right over here is the ask a question thing. So we got 4 questions there so far. and go ahead and add more in, because otherwise we'll just stare here awkwardly, because we won't have anything to say.
To say. I have faith.
Yeah. Actually, let's see if we can get 2 questions in super quick. The first one being, okay, wait a second. I actually have to have artwork for this. Maps.
Oh yeah.
Yes. Okay. Who's the artist? Who's the artist of this map?
It's me.
It's you.
It's me. Yeah.
You. All right. Why are maps necessary in this particular story, and how jazzed are you that they let you actually keep your own maps?
I pressed really hard. I don't know if they felt they had an option. But no, here's why. Okay. Well, I can't find every map, but basically, if you can open your page to that map.
Okay, hold on. I gotta find it again.
Yes. This is highly technical.
Highly
technical visual aid, because where are we?
There we go. Okay, found it. Okay, so here we are.
Bloody hell.
There we are.
Okay. And now, there. So that's the map for 3012.
Right.
And these, let's see, is that right?
There you go.
Yeah, those are the exact same dimensions of the exact same land. And so that shows you how much the land has changed over time.
Sure.
And not only how much the land has changed, so you can see, like, this is directly from flood map data. So basically, if all the seas melted, or not all the seas, Jesus, all of the ice, the ice melted, and the sea levels rose that much, that's what Western Belize would look like. It would.
I really appreciate the fact that you went to the flood maps for that, right?
Totally. Well, no. It's online. That's online. I didn't go to that in Belize.
No. But I mean that you actually were like, okay, here's the terrain map, and now I'm going to flood it.
Yes. No, that's exactly what it looked like. And if I didn't do that, I wouldn't be able to sleep at night. That's the level of rigor that I aspire to in my science fiction, is like, I want to get my math right. And that is, having a background in science, I think, is just like, if I don't get this right, I'll be the laughing stock of the department.
Right. Exactly.
So yeah, I get it right. And so, like, if whoever wants to check my work, check my work.
Yeah. It's like,
except for that one city in Europe.
You know what's wrong? They'll fix it in the paperback. It'll be fine.
I hope so. If my editor's watching, we need to fix one thing.
One thing. Just one. Honestly, if in a book this size, if you have to fix one thing, you have done very, very, very well.
Thank you.
All right, I'm gonna pop up the ask a question thing here and see what the questions are. Oh, let's start off with the first one. So, how does it feel to have John Scalzi compare you to Ursula K. Le Guin? And let me just say, as John Scalzi, I don't think it's an inapt comparison, quite frankly, not just in a matter of, because you're my pal or anything like that, but I think because the complexity and forethought and the simple fact that you have gone through necessary narrative steps to take this world and create it on the same level as someone like Le Guin did, it's not an inapt comparison. So,
well, now I'm getting choked up.
Yeah.
So that's one part of the answer. Le Guin, I grew up on Le Guin. I grew up on Kim Stanley Robinson, and to have my work compared to Le Guin is exactly what I'm hoping for.
Sure.
Because it's exactly what I intend, but that doesn't mean that when the comparison is made, it feels any less gratifying.
Sure.
It is also overwhelming because you can't fully get your head around it. this is something, you know, even with the book out and everything, and like trying to just in one fell swoop get my head around a sense of accomplishment or a sense of I can't do it because I'm in a human mortal body that's stuck to linear time. So yeah. And I have tea to drink, and I, you know.
Yes. Is there any chance you will write prequels about the events that took place between 2012 and 3012, such as the 100-Year Carnival?
Did Leslie ask that?
No,
Is that
it's
person?
Donna.
Who?
Donna.
Okay. I skipped that for a reason.
Go on.
Well, it was really convenient that, you know, by 3012, all of the world's major problems had been solved. But the road to get there is alluded to. It's alluded to in 3012 that it was long and very difficult and included multiple evolutionary bottlenecks, you know, like where humanity was in danger of going extinct, and they had to evolve into basically another species in order to survive. And that could be rich territory. I mean, I think of the 100-Year Carnival as a classic. So the festivals of inversion where beggars put on crowns and kings go into the streets and beg, and that's what the 100-Year Carnival would be worldwide, is just like everything gets flipped upside down, and seasteaders on their extremely expensive seasteads are just like, people will swim out in canoes and just like, you know, take them over. It just like a total inversion of the power of wealth happening over a period of 100 years, enabled by climate change, enabled by catastrophic climate change, and how much that will upend all usual societal structures. Yeah.
Sure. The thing I always think about when they're like, because in my books there's like huge jumps in time where, you know, things are alluded to, as you mentioned, and people are like, can you write about that? It's like, no, because whatever I'm gonna come up with is going to be so much less satisfying than what you have imagined this is going to be in your brain. And also I'm incredibly lazy.
Yes, too. But and also, like, I have this other idea. I mean, I might return to any of my works at some point. People have asked me that about The Girl on the Road too, but I just have like 70 other things to write first.
Right.
You know, and that's, I'm addicted to novelty. And so I want to just work on a whole new world.
Right. Well, and then this actually comes into the next question by Larry. He says, in the acknowledgments, I think you mentioned someone convincing you to take all three stories and making them a single book instead of a trilogy. And how'd that go down, and how might the story have looked as a trilogy?
Well, that suggestion I credit to Zachary Wagman, who is currently at Flatiron Books, the editor of The Girl on the Road, who is a wonderful person and editor. So when we took out the trilogy, and it was a trilogy then, 3 separate books, you know, 1012, 2012, 3012, and the 1012 one was called The Nameless Days, and the 2012 one was called Tourist Season.
Fair.
Yeah, accurate. So what happened was it's not unusual to propose a trilogy by writing one book and then writing an outline of the other two and pitching that to editors. Sure. And we did that, and to a person, every editor was like, this is brilliant. I just can't see the whole thing. I just can't, you know, get my head around it. And by that time, it was September 2016. I was out of money. I was depending on the next sale for whatever my salary was going to be, because I was in debt from having researched. Sure. Well, and everybody said no. and I curled up into a ball on my bed and just, I mean, you probably remember that, but I was just like so angry and so bitter. And now the thing I hate to admit is that they were totally right. They should have rejected it as it was. And that, you know, a trilogy, unless I were super, super famous, a trilogy that is set in 3 completely different time periods would be hard to market and would be hard to sell. So just make it one big cloud atlas thing. And so I remember taking my color-coded index cards to Open Eye Cafe in Carborough and just setting up shop and writing down every single scene and arranging them on a huge wooden board. And that became the basis for the cycling one. And now it goes through 12 cycles. So 1012, 2012, 3012, 12 times. And that's 36 chapters. And if you'll notice, it begins with, the prologue says, I'm requesting the standard discussion period of 36 hours. Thanks.
Nice.
That's one of the many, many Easter eggs in it.
I was super thrilled. I mean, just as a nerd, right? Because at the turn of the millennium, long before you ever met me, I was talking about the best calendar of the past millennium. And my answer was the long count, right? Because everything about it is super complex, you know, and you think that you understand it. It's like, but no, there's actually like 3 different calendars and they're all put together and they will all, you know, eventually, you know, make sense. And everybody thought the end of the world was going to happen in 2012, you know, and it's like, no, you just don't. It's just the calendar's rolling over. It's not like just the calendar. So for me, the fact that you know, have all those little sort of, you know, Mayan calendar Easter eggs in there is just, for me, was just vindication of my belief that it really is the superior calendar in every way. So.
Oh yeah. I mean, the Maya, their entire currency of religious thought was time and is time, you know, in many places in the Maya world. So yeah.
Sure. All right, let us go.
I don't mean to go off on a tangent.
Yeah, no, I mean, this is why we are here. The tangents are what people are here for. It's not, where did you get your ideas? Here we go. What inspired you to create a future society where people don't raise their biological children and children form multivalent attachment?
Yes.
And you gotta be quick on these because we want to get to a couple more.
Okay. That was from The Dispossessed, except I took it logically much far further. So in The Dispossessed, in the anarchist society that Ursula K. Le Guin writes, children are born to a set of parents and have a sort of nominal attachment to them, but they're basically raised by a community. And that has tons of other examples around the world that I know less than other people about, but that's where the idea came from. And like, how far could you take that? And I actually got pushback from some friends who are mothers, who are parents, who are just like, no way, could never happen. Could never happen. Like, I couldn't breastfeed another child. Nobody else could breastfeed my child. And I was just like, yeah, but what if?
You know, it's like, let me introduce you to the concept of wet nurse.
Yes, that also. Yes.
Yeah. Kathy says, it feels like the girl on the road is in the same universe as the actual star. So I guess the first question to that would be, is that a thing? And second of all, would the next book be in the same universe if so?
Oh, next book will not be in the same universe. It's a surrealist love story, very untethered to reality. But the girl in the road and the actual star could share the same universe. They're not mutually exclusive. I don't want to go so far as to say that they're in the same universe, but nothing that happens in 3012 contradicts what happens in The Girl on the Road. And there are sea roads everywhere. Sea roads are just something that need to happen at a certain point. I need to be able to walk across oceans.
Well, I think one of the things that is really interesting about science fiction audiences or speculative fiction audiences is once an author starts writing multiple books, they will of their own accord try to connect them all together. Because I get this question of like, is the interdependency connected to the Old Man's War universe, is connected to the Android's Dream universe? And the answer for me is no. That's again a level of organization I do not have. And I appreciate that you think that this is something that I've thought out like 30 years in advance, but no.
But let them. I mean, that's a beautiful thing is when people make connections that even I never saw. Like that is beautiful. Readers are collaborators.
Oh, yeah, I don't have a problem with it. And when someone says, I have an explanation for how, like, some obscure thing in my universe works, which I absolutely just pulled out of my rear end, right? And they go into detail about it. And I'm like, that sounds really close.
That's the perfect answer. Because I mean, I might go with that because a friend who's amazing asked me, like, how does the AI work? And I was like, fuck if I know. Like it just kind of knows everything. Yeah.
It's like, you don't answer it. You let the engineers go, well, I think it works like this. And you're like, yes, that's exactly right. Okay, let's clear the board very quickly.
Okay.
First, the very complex question, which I'm going to give you like 30 seconds to answer because I'm cruel that way.
Okay.
Do you think the founders of extant major religions had lives more like Leah or lives like Ixwell and Azul? And they could see the air shimmer when Shibboleth got close. Does the world have to become magical around you in order to found a religion? Go.
Ooh, holy damn.
30 seconds. Do it.
Leah. Hi, Carter.
Hey.
I think Leah is very much like Joan of Arc in the sense that she just had an utter conviction about things that nobody could ever talk her out of. And just that diamond hard conviction is so rare in history that it can move people, sometimes for the better and sometimes not. But I wanted Leah to be a spiritual savant where she is just like, here's where I need to go. Here's what I need to do. I need to seek the other world. And I know how to do that. And then, yeah.
Okay. Next question.
Yes.
This would be a super easy one, I think. Kindle lets you show commonly highlighted sections. Do either of you ever look at these for your books? My answer to that is no.
Now I want to. Oh my God.
Yes, do it.
I totally will.
Yeah. And then finally, what advice do you both have for someone just starting to write SF? My quick advice is butt in chair, start writing, keep writing, get it done, send it out, repeat.
Yes. I mean, read every day and write every day to whatever extent you are able. That is, it's so boring, but that's it.
Yeah.
Like, that's really it. And write every day could mean like half a page of a journal entry. That's it. Yeah. That's a lot of day. That's all I write. So yeah.
I am slowly fading into the background here because my room is gotten completely dark. It looks like I'm in a dungeon. No, I feel like Colonel Kurtz in Apocalypse Now. It's like the horror. So fortunately, good news is
we are in the last minute.
Yeah, yes. We are done. We are out of time. Monica, the actual star. It's fantastic, folks. Get it? You can get it here with a signed book plate. Go ahead and do that. People will be talking about this book all year. It's absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much for spending your time with both Monica and me today. And Carter, take it away.
Yeah, I just was going to ask you to tell everyone any upcoming projects and anywhere to follow you on the internet.
Oh, I'm at Monica Byrne 13 everywhere.
Perfect.
Instagram, Twitter, and Patreon. And then next thing I'm working on a whole bunch of movie scripts.
Yeah. I'm Scalzi on Twitter and on Google. Just type in Scalzi, you'll find me. And then the next book of mine is a novel called The Kaiju Preservation Society, which will be out in March. And then after that, who knows? I mean, I will take up knitting.
Yes, which you can pre-order with us. I am absolutely positive of that. And you can check out more events happening at Astoria Bookshop. And by at, I mean on Crowdcast, because we don't have any physical events yet because of the pandemic. So next week, if you have any kids in your life that might be interested in a middle grade event, we have Marco Shiro and Zoraida Cordova who are talking about The Insiders, which is Marco Shiro's debut middle grade novel. And then we also have a event with a cookbook author with pop culture kind of cookbook, and it's really cool. It's a local author, super cool. We're gonna bake Mordor lava cakes, so that's pretty fun.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, so check all that out and be sure to buy the actual star right down there. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you
all
so much, Carter. Thank you so
Bye,
much.
everyone.